Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is the NewzBeat presented to you by the Dislike and Survivor. Follow the beat from the studio to the street. Info with the flow keeps you sharp and in the know. Sit back, relax, enjoy the news. Follow. Almost half of the world's population is threatened by malaria, and over 500,000 people die from the disease every year. In 2015, Africa alone had 89% of the malaria cases, and the continent also had 91% of the malaria deaths.
However, since the year 2000, malaria deaths have also dropped by 60%, which is attributed to the distribution of over 1 billion insecticide-treated nets, preventing an estimated 700 million infections on all the continents.
But most of the children in the sub-Saharan Africa are still under threat because less than 5% sleep under insecticide-treated nets.
Many people have also developed a resistance for anti-malaria drugs, prompting them to resort to traditional methods and herbs.
There have also been worries of mosquitoes developing insecticide resistance, which in some areas has led to malaria resurgence.
However, plans to develop new nets with 2 different insecticides are on course to counter the insecticide resistance of the mosquitoes.
Researchers at the Ifakara Health Institute in Tanzania have also developed a box that attracts Anopheles mosquitoes which transmit malaria.
The mosquito landing box works by releasing a human scent along with carbon dioxide, which acts as human breath to attract mosquitoes from the outside. Once inside, the mosquitoes are electrocuted or covered in insecticide.
Although malaria cases have dropped significantly, malaria still costs Africa an estimated $25 billion annually. So many African countries have vowed to eradicate the killer disease by 2030.
At the peak of its power, the Mali Empire had at least 400 cities, with many centers of trade, culture and universities. The Mali Empire's wealth was the news all over the world, as Europeans came to trade their manufactured goods for gold. At the center of this success was King Mansa Musa I, who was said to be an exceptional economist, with a huge army that kept his trade routes policed. But it was his extravagant pilgrimage to Mecca that caught the attention of leaders in Europe and the Middle East. King Mansa Musa made his pilgrimage in 1324, when no Muslim leader from West Africa had ever made the trip before. His procession had 60,000 men and hundreds of camels, and he adequately fed the entire company of men and animals. The king gave out gold dust as some form of money to the poor and the needy that he met along his journey. He also traded gold for souvenirs only. But economies from Medina to Mecca to Cairo city were heavily affected by King Mansa Musa's generosity. He gave out so much gold on his pilgrimage that the sudden influx of gold devalued the metal for a decade. Upon his return, he brought along scholars and architects who introduced advanced building techniques and Islamic texts. He was a major influence on the world's first university of Timbuktu. He brought architects for the great Jingwedaba Mosque too. King Mansa Musa was the biggest of all high rollers, who made his fortune by trading gold, salt and ivory. He was estimated to be worth $400 billion, which makes him the richest man in history. Corruption has become a persistent cancer on the African continent. Our reporter Abrams is here with the full report.
Corruption has been singled out as the biggest obstacle to Africa's progression, as billions of dollars are squandered every year through deliberate misappropriation. A new report released by Transparency International shows that the vice has increasingly become institutional. According to their report, 75 million people in sub-Saharan Africa paid a bribe by way of money or gift in the past year. Nearly 1 out of 5 citizens on the African continent also paid bribes to acquire official documents. Many Africans had to pay bribes to get access to basic services like healthcare, where many had to pay off doctors and nurses. The police and courts of law that were established to protect the local populations were also mentioned in the report as some of the most corrupt institutions. Although South Africa has been surpassed by Somalia as the most corrupt country in Africa, the Rainbow Nation is still struggling with the corruption tumor, with corruption scandals also involving the South African president Jacob Zuma. However, in countries like Botswana and Mauritius, where there's good governance, corruption levels are at 1%, which is similar to most Western countries. Senegal has also created a national office to curb the fraud and corruption threats, and also passed a law for elected officials to declare their assets. Most African countries have, however, failed to build anti-corruption institutions to implement strong and enforceable laws against corruption, leaving the vice unchecked and perpetrators free from prosecution. I'm Abrams, reporting for NewzBeat.
Thank you, Abrams, for that report. The ancient craft of backcloth making is struggling to stay afloat due to the dwindling number of backcloth craftsmen and low demand for the cloth. The low wages have discouraged the craftsmen from joining the business and forced the old artisans to seek for better paying occupation and cut their losses. Not much has changed over the centuries with the bark-making process. The inner bark of the tree, which goes by the botanical name Ficus netalensis, is harvested in the rainy season and beaten with a stick over a period of time to get its texture to become soft and fine. In the Uganda kingdom, it was the Ota clan's responsibility to manufacture bark cloth for the royal family and the rest of the community. It was worn on coronation, healing ceremonies, funerals and cultural gatherings. According to UNESCO, the craft was discovered long before weaving, and though it was heavily affected by the introduction of cotton in the 19th century, barkcloth making has survived over 600 years as an industry. And the good news is that now it's being encouraged and promoted in Uganda Kingdom, and the barkcloth is also making more appearances in the world of fashion. Fashion designers are making clothes, bags, hats and shoes. Designer Jose Hendel's Back to Myros collection has received great reviews. A barkcloth festival was also held in Masaka district under United States funded program to rejuvenate the dying craft. Barkcloth was put on UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage List in 2005, and it remains Uganda's only original cultural representative. Unfortunately, there remains very few artisans with the task of keeping the craft alive. That was the news of the beat. Next week will be another hit, Still Ladylike and Survivor, reporting live and direct with love and respect. Follow the beat, follow the beat, follow the beat, follow the beat.
Follow the beat.
Follow the beat, follow the beat, follow the beat, follow the beat.
Follow the beat.